Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here, back after a little while off, and nothing actually really happened. I hope everything's okay in the world, because that's very, very rare that nothing happens in the Tottenham Hotspur world when I'm off. But hey, it was good for me. I got actually had a bit of a rest. It was very pleasant. Not so great for you guys, obviously. But it was lovely to just kind of rest and recharge for a few days before returning on Sunday for a very entertaining game. And it wasn't just me returning, it was, a near capacity crowd. Well, close to capacity, it was 58,000 and something. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. But, obviously, been to all of the pre season matches so far, and I've seen the team kind of developing and growing, and the rhythm and the fitness and the understanding and the patterns of play and the formation under Nuno Espirito Santo. And to see it all click very, very well against Manchester City was brilliant. And to be spurred on, if you'll pardon the pun, by that crowd who, you guys who were there were absolutely incredible. I laugh and I joke sometimes with other journalists about how, we haven't got our nice quiet stadium to work in anymore. But let's be honest, it was never football. It was never football with an empty stadium. And I think Sunday was right up there with the best atmospheres the new stadiums had. It really was. It was incredible. It was just absolutely buzzing from even before the match. It was quite slow to fill up. I think a lot of people were kind of taking their time to come in, whether they were eating, drinking, whatever they were doing, either on the high street, in the stadium. But it took a little while, and it just slowly before the game just started the kind of noise for the players coming out, and especially for Nuno Espirito Santo, who I'll come to in a little bit about that. And then what really set the tone was Japhet Tanganga's challenge. I think it was on Raheem Sterling within like the first minute or two. He absolutely crunched into him. And I think from that moment, it just set the tone, not only for the fans who were like, oh, all right, we're trying today. Fantastic. This is what the Nuno Espirito Santo Spurs is all about. But it also set the tone for the other players on the pitch, because then they all started to slam into these challenges. And it was awesome. It was. I'd honestly say, I think I said this to one of the other journos. I said, it's probably the most entertaining Tottenham game I can remember covering since probably the win at Old Trafford in Mourinho's second season, wasn't it? It was first full season. That's probably the last time I enjoyed a match as much, because Spurs have had, recent home victories against Man City, and while there's been some very clever tactics on display, while defending's been superb, there's still been that element of, Spurs kind of snatched it on the day. They kind of snatched the points, they nicked it. That just wasn't the case on Sunday. They deserved the win. They were very, very good, and to be honest, with a little bit better work in the final third, could have won it more comfortably. Man City were really nullified by the way Spurs played. One shot on goal, pretty much. Sorry, one shot to save for Hugo Lloris, which was the Kevin De Bruyne kind of quite tame effort. It wasn't the hardest shot for him to deal with in the world, and it just kind of restricted them to that. And it was really, really good. I mean, I'm going to talk about Nuno in a minute, so I'm not going to go too much into that. Let's start with some of the players just who really stood out. I mean, I mentioned him straight from the off. Japhet Tanganga was incredible. Nuno Espirito Santo called him huge. He said he doesn't, because he really doesn't pick out individuals, and he said, I don't do that, but he was huge today. And I'm intrigued to see now kind of what happens with Japhet, because obviously, anyone that watches this or reads my stuff, I only did a really nice kind of interview I enjoyed with Japhet a couple of weeks back where he kind of spelled out his hope for the season and everything. And up to a week ago, Japhet was heading out on loan. It was likely that was going to be the case. But I actually think, and from everything I'm hearing, he was so good on Sunday, such an incredible level of performance, that I think he's actually changed his kind of path for the season ahead. And I think at the moment, it's kind of his spot to lose which is an incredible turnaround for him. And it's with Japhet, it's all about keeping fit. I think that'll be the main thing for him. But listen to me call him Japhet like we're best mates or something. But yeah, he was fantastic on the day. He had two very different attacking threats to deal with in Jack Grealish and Raheem Sterling. One in Grealish that's all kind of guile, creativity, but can also dribble. And then you've got Sterling with the pace and the nimbleness and the agility to suddenly switch and turn and whenever he wants. And, I saw someone had changed his Wikipedia entry, Japhet Tanganga, to something like, it had all his normal stuff, and he has two sons, Jack Grealish and Raheem Sterling. And it's what? But it was kind of I guess it just showed how in control he was. And what is he, 22 years old? It was an incredible performance from him, and we've kind of seen this, haven't we? Especially in the big games. I think he really is a big game player. He made his debut against Liverpool. I'm pretty sure he had a really good game against City before as well. I can't remember if it was in the league or what it was in, but he was very good in that as well, I seem to remember. But he was just, I'd say faultless. I'd actually go as far to say he was probably faultless. I gave him a 9 in my player ratings, and the next day I kind of thought he probably deserved a 10 because I was trying to think if there was anything he actually did wrong. It was superb, absolutely superb. And why I say I think, he's carved out his own path now is because Nuno likes to do, yes, I'm going to call him first name as well. Nuno likes this defensive fullback, one attacking fullback, which is similar to Mourinho in that respect. And he likes, especially with someone like Tanganga, he can tuck in to make a 3, which we know, especially in Wolves' best years in the Premier League, was what he preferred was a back 3. So having a right back that can tuck in to make a back 3 to let's say Reguilon bomb on, it's really set up for him to take that shirt and keep it. I think Matt Doherty will, you'd imagine will play in games where you need someone that's more attacking. Like the European games, like the Cup games, and potentially some games where they're not playing. Not going to play Man City every week and need to be pinned back at times. But no, Tanganga was superb, and he had that lovely moment where he came off with whatever it was for Doherty, about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit more of normal time to go, and he went off the far side of the pitch. So when he came off, he got to do this kind of half lap of honour with the Spurs fans all singing Japhet Tanganga, he's one of our own. And just applauding him all the way around. It was a lovely, lovely moment for him. It was so nice. And, he wasn't the only homegrown player who I thought really did well on the day. Obviously, he was probably my man of the match. He was phenomenal. But Oliver Skipp, very good as well. I don't need to bang on about Oliver Skipp because you know what I think about Oliver Skipp and how good he can be. I'd say for the first maybe 15 minutes, a little bit more, he was a little bit frantic. He was a little bit trying to get into the pace of the game. He was almost overdoing it. And then he did this tackle on Raheem Sterling in the box, which was just to the left of the goal. And it had to be perfectly timed. If it wasn't, it was a penalty. But it was spot on. And I felt from that moment, he just grew and grew and grew. And just absolutely kind of owned that role in the middle of the pitch alongside Højbjerg and Dele Alli as well, who we're going to have a little chat about. And for Skippy to come in there and do that, essentially it's his first... He's started matches before, but it's been very much as a young player coming in because why not? Like they were playing, I remember him starting, was it against Burnley, maybe at Wembley? Was it Wembley? It was a couple of years back. And he also played at Burnley away. Was it Burnley away? It was either... Yeah, it was Burnley, wasn't it? It was Norwich. It was a Norwich match away where Foyth and Vertonghen got taken off. It was Burnley away that Skipp and Ndombele got taken off at half-time. But this was the first time for Skipp. He was starting because he was considered a starter. And that was a huge difference. And to be in such a huge match against such a, the reigning champions of the Premier League, I just thought he smashed it. I think he did really, really well. He did a lot of the dirty work. I really like that partnership with Højbjerg. And this is, I'll come to it now. I was going to say this later, but I think it probably fits in nicely now, is that what's really important to notice is the difference a manager can make in terms of the outlook or the intent. Because if you actually look at it on Sunday, Tottenham played with 7 defensive players, really. maybe even argue 8 if you're going to include Dele Alli in there as well, because he was playing in a deeper role. And essentially it was that front three of Bergwijn, Lucas and Son. In, let's say, Mourinho's time, having 7-8 defensive players on the pitch, we know exactly what was going to happen. How they were going to set up, how they were going to play. They were going to try and stop the opposition for long, long periods and then just hope to take the odd break. And those attacking players would also have to be doing defensive work in their own half as well. And I thought what was really, really different about Espirito Santo's setup was that while there were those 7-8 defensive players, Spurs had a real attacking intent. And actually, like I said earlier, could have had more goals. They really, really flew forward as much as they could. And I think the difference was that other than the odd little moments, Lucas, Son and Bergwijn were pretty much told, no, you stay in their half. You caused problems. They were like these pesky flies buzzing around City all the time. And it never let City kind of sit still. They were constantly having to chase them up the pitch. And I just thought that was a huge difference. It made it not so much about counter-attacking, although it was to a point. It was more about just constantly trying to get that ball forward. And Pep Guardiola said something after the game like, the stats are always the same. We always come here and play really well, but we don't win. Well, work it out. It's like, Pep Guardiola is, I don't get on the board that he's a bad coach and all this sort of stuff because he's got loads of money to spend and it's an easy job and all that. But what I would say is if you are spending, I think he's about to cross the £1 billion mark for 5 years in charge or something at Man City of transfer spending, you should be able to come up with solutions to that. But they just can't do it at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium or White Hart Lane before that or Wembley before that. I think I saw a stat, John Veal put it out, something like, since Pep Guardiola called Tottenham the Harry Kane team, I can't remember the exact figure, but I think Spurs have beaten them 4 or 5 times at home and Kane's only played one of those and came off early in another or something. It's just like, Spurs are City's bogey team at home. We know with Spurs and we're always worried about certain teams they play, but to actually be the biggest spending team in Europe's bogey team, it's quite funny in a way. But yeah, no, I loved the way they played. It was so entertaining. And I do want to say something about Dele Alli as well, because he's another one I felt I slightly harshly marked. I gave him a 7 and I kind of reflected. And when I saw stuff back, that's the thing with being in the moment and seeing it in the game. You're trying to see everything, whereas we don't get the benefits of like real replays. We get quick replays sometimes after goals and stuff, but we're not mainly, getting to have stuff highlighted for us and looking over and over and over. And when I kind of came out of it and watched bits of the game again the next day, I felt he probably did more that I didn't even notice. So I probably would have bumped him up to an 8 rather than a 7. And, I saw the Opta stats for him. He covered the most distance in the game with 11.6 kilometres, and he had the highest speed of 6.9 kilometres an hour. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, he's not faster than Lucas and players like that, or Sterling. But what it actually is he was working so hard and constantly sprinting up and down the pitch that he maintained a higher average speed because he was just doing so much. I asked Nuno Espirito Santo after the game about him. I said, you've got him playing this new role on like the left of a midfield 3 and a 4-3-3, but then very much the onus is on him when you switch to a 4-2-3-1. He's got to get up there very quickly and be one of the attacking players. And he said, look, we came in and we looked at different solutions for various players, and we just felt with Dele, aside from the skills he's got, he's a runner. He can get box to box all day. So we felt that this role would absolutely cater for that. And it's very different. We know Dele Alli as the goal scorer, the one who's got to 50 goals faster than the likes, in the 50 Premier League goals faster than the likes of Gerrard, Scholes, Lampard, all of these people. But here, he's playing a very tactically disciplined role, much deeper. I still worry about the threat posed to him by probably Lo Celso when he comes back, and eventually on Ndombele, who we're going to talk about as well. But I do think he's absolutely having, a real go to say it should be his shirt right now, because, they're not going to play Man City's every week as well. So he's not going to have to do as much defending as he had to do and as much work. He put in, we talk about Skipp Skipp just reminded me, right in extra time, added time, he put in this crunching, perfect tackle to stop a break. Davinson Sanchez did the same. But Dele Alli did a couple of those in the match as well. I mean, real big tackles that you wouldn't kind of expect him to be making, and he did it. And I think from everything I've heard about, with Dele is, we mustn't forget, Dele kind of came out the whole Mourinho period a little bit broken, didn't he? He'd had a tough time before that already, towards the end of the Poch time. I think he had a little upturn in form before Poch went, and that carried a bit into the Mourinho time. Then we got all the stuff that we later saw on the Amazon cameras of Mourinho calling him a lazy trainer, not good in training and stuff like that. And then, as I've said in these videos before, I was told that over the summer he did loads of work in Dubai at the NAS complex, really working on his physique. He's definitely bulked up and working on his fitness. And I think that's put him in such a good stead with Nuno, because he's come back. And I've been told that he and Bergwijn were the two that really, really stood out as like the best trainers in the first weeks of pre-season. And I think this is all managers want. You give them the solution, essentially. They look at how they want to set up their team. And if Dele comes back with incredible fitness and physique and the ability to play this role that suits what the Espirito Santo wants to do down to the ground, bang, he's in the team. And that's it. And I'm delighted for Dele. I like Dele, and I think he's a very talented player who's just gone through a dip. And I've always understood why Spurs have been reluctant to let him go, because they can kind of see what he could be. And I'm intrigued to see kind of what this new position does to him and how much he continues in it and stuff like that. So we'll see. I mentioned the front three. I thought they were all excellent again. Bergwijn is impressing me every week. I think he's got all of the ability to be a really successful Premier League player. He still needs that little bit of confidence. He got an assist on the day. A little bit of an overhit pass to Son, but still an assist. He had that one-on-one chance he should have scored, and I'm sure he will be replaying that in his head, even despite the win. But I thought once again, he really showed, he's only, 22, 23, he's still a very young player. But I think he's absolutely made for the Premier League. And I'm intrigued to see, because he's going to have a battle with, Brian Hill's coming in, and someone else I'm completely forgetting. Well, it could be another new player, but we'll come to that a little bit later. But yeah, I really like Bergwijn. I think Lucas has been hugely improved. For me, Lucas is 2021. He's possibly been the most improved player during this year in terms of the players who've been at Spurs. He's finding a lot more efficiency in the way he plays. As anyone knows that reads or listens to my stuff, I've always said about Lucas is that the final third lets him down. For a player with his ability, he didn't have enough assists, didn't have enough goals, and he has a habit of getting past two players and then running into a third, and maybe a lot of his good work was kind of done almost on the halfway line. And I just feel in 2021, it's just something's clicked for him. It may well have been something Mourinho did, I don't know, but he's carried that in pre-season. He's looked superb, and he was absolutely fantastic on Sunday. Everything he was doing was making a difference and making an impact. And, very clever touch that set Bergwijn away for the goal for Son. And he had a few dribbles where they just didn't know what to do with him. He wasn't running into the third man. He was using the ball well. And yeah, Lucas could have a big season. He's one who I always felt, and I've said this before, that if Spurs maybe got another big bid for him, they might consider it. But I think, a bit like Tanganga, I think he's been so good, I think it'd be difficult to let him go now, because I think he could have a big part to play across the season when you need all your squad. Whether he ends up not being starting every week, who knows? But, especially... that's who I was actually thinking of. Son was the other winger I was thinking of, because obviously if Kane comes back in or any other striker is up front, then Son becomes a winger again, essentially, and that creates more competition for those two slots. So yeah, I really, I was a huge Eric Lamela fan, so a little bit gutted to see him go, but I kind of understood why it was the right time, and did score 2 goals in his debut for Sevilla. But I think the attacking options they've got, replacing Lamela with Gil is very exciting. It is, he's a young talent on the bench, unused, but no. Lucas and Bergwijn, excellent. Sonny, what can you say about Sonny? I think he will probably still be disappointed with some of the kind of decisions he made in the first half with when to pass and when to shoot and the shots he had. Even Espirito Santo said that after the game. He probably would have wanted to do a little bit more. But what you cannot deny with Sonny at the moment is he's absolutely stepping up to be the star. He knows with everything going on with Harry Kane that he can be the star of the team. The fans adore him. He's just signed a new big deal. He's pledged his future to the club. He said, I want to win everything here. Fans couldn't love him any more than they already do. And he's loving it. He's loving it. It was another lovely goal, albeit he was falling over as he hit the shot, which maybe makes it even more impressive. And after the game, he just did this walk around the 4 stands and just applauded every one of the fans. And he's just got this lovely connection with the fans. And like I say, with everything that's happening with Kane, which we're going to come to in a little bit, and it is really sad, I think, on a lot of levels. But for Son, he's stepping up and just saying, look, I can take it. Stick it on my shoulders. I can handle it. And I think that's the biggest compliment you can pay him. He's absolutely in his prime right now. And I think he could have a huge season. He had a terrific half. Probably first half of the season was incredible. Second half wasn't bad when you actually look at the numbers, but it was little bits of inconsistency and maybe tiredness in there. He played a lot of minutes. But I think this season, if he's used properly, and I think Espirito Santo will properly rotate, it could be a massive season for Son. It really could. Who else? Davinson Sanchez. Mentioned him earlier. As I said last week about the Arsenal game, he was brilliant in that game. And I'd actually say possibly even better against City. I think there was one moment where I maybe could criticise him for slightly being out of position, but he made a terrific sliding block to stop Gundogan. I think that was in the first... No, it might have been the second half. And then he did another, like I said about Oliver Skipp, did a fantastic added time sliding tackle on the left-hand side. I can't remember who it was against, but I think I said this last week. He's come back and surprised a lot of people at the club. He's been very, very confident, whether that's because of the Copa America, finishing third with Colombia, or whether it's the interest that's been in him this summer. He's come back and very much put down a marker and said, yeah, get me out of this team. And, I'm not going to go over old ground, but I've never been on the Sanchez hate train, and I think you guys know that. I think there's a player there, and I think he's always had that issue of needing someone guiding alongside him. And I think he had that with Vertonghen in the first season. And then when Vertonghen started to be in and out of the team, I think we saw the knock-on effect on Sanchez. And I've always felt that. He makes a daft decision maybe once a game. And I think he just needs someone to kind of coach him through that. And, I'm about to say, Eric Dyer, is he the one? But then I'm also about to say that Eric Dyer was superb on Sunday. He was very, very good. And I think a lot of people went in the game worrying about how Dyer and Sanchez were going to be against the might of Manchester City. They were both excellent. They were both really good. Dyer had a really good game. After the game, he took 2 of his young family members out and was playing a little kickabout on the pitch. And some of the fans that were left behind, this was a good probably 45 minutes after the final whistle, and a couple of fans still there were, showing him a lot of love. And I think he would have probably taken a lot of contentment, him and Sanchez, because they went into the game with a lot of flack. And, myself included, probably was slightly concerned about how they'd be and how they'd cope with what Man City would throw at them. But they coped with it and then some. They were superb. And Sergio Reguilon as well, not to overlook him. Playing at left-back, known as a more attacking left-back, but actually he did his defending very, very well. He didn't get too many chances to get forward, but what he did in his half of the pitch was very, very good. And it was an excellent performance. You could see it on my face. I really, really enjoyed it. It was some games I feel like it's absolute privilege that I'm allowed to go into that stadium and write and watch games, and that was one of them. It was awesome. The flags, which can be a bit of a a tacky thing if it's overused. I feel if you use it at the right moments, it can be pretty special, and I felt that was the case again. I managed to somehow, and I'm normally absolutely swamped at the final whistle because I'm doing everything, the player ratings, setting up a press conference blog and all this sort of stuff. But I just kind of took a moment because people started to do the flags in front of us, and I just thought, it might make a really nice photo. I took so long to try and get it to go that actually the final whistle went as I took the photo, and I just got this. You see it on my Instagram, and I think I put it on Twitter as well. This really lovely moment of pure fluke on my part of capturing it, of just all the fans up and the flags in their hands and just loving what they saw. And, you know, for Nuno Espirito Santo, I must admit, I was so happy for him. Among all the many narratives of that match, I think the one I enjoyed the most was Nuno Espirito Santo, who, let's be honest, was probably not in most people's top 10 lists of managers they wanted for Tottenham Hotspur. And I'll put myself in that as well. And to have a terrific pre-season, what he's achieved in a month in stitching together a fragmented squad. The spirit is back. The spirit is fantastic in the camp. All the players are saying it. Everyone connected with the club are saying it. It's just like, it's really nice again. And I think to do that in the space of a month, he's a very clear and transparent guy. He's quite quiet. People I've spoken to have kind of put him somewhere midway between Poch and Mourinho in not only the way he speaks to people, but also the way he coaches and stuff like that. He's somewhere right in the middle. He's a very warm guy when he does talk. He observes a lot and then he talks. He's very warm, very engaging. And yeah, from what I can tell, pretty much all the players have really respected kind of how honest he is to them. Some might not have. But on the whole, I think players just want to be told what's what and what they have to do and why they're not playing and why they are going to play and what role and what future and what plans are there for them. And he's been really good with us in the media on the whole. I'd say I've been very fortunate. Everything I've asked him, I've got really interesting answers back. And, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to hide it. I really like him. I do. I think he's come across really well. It's very early days and, he might decide that I'm the worst journalist ever and he doesn't want to ever talk to me again. But at this stage, I think he's done a terrific job and he's been a very engaging... I think the best thing you can say about him, other than the fact that clearly he's got coaching ability and management ability, is that he seems a good man. Well after the final whistle Sunday, I was finishing up my stuff after the press conferences and I looked out and I saw him emerge from the tunnel. And he came out with his family, like some young kids, and I presume was his wife. And, and if you aren't aware of the recent backstory of Nuno Espirito Santo, just very quickly, while lockdown, I think it was the first lockdown happened, his family got stuck essentially in Portugal. They'd gone back to Portugal and the lockdown meant he was without them for a long time. Very close-knit family as well. And he struggled emotionally, really, really difficult for him. There's some interviews out there. He was very openly said, look, I'm really having a tough time mentally. I'm in quite a dark place because I haven't got my family around me. And then obviously with the stress of the job as it is, and then not to have your loved ones around you. And I just thought, for me, I was aware of that. And so to see them come out on the pitch, and what they did was they had this little kind of slow walk around. They took all photos, and you don't imagine he's quite a serious guy, it comes across as, but just to see him like posing with his family and having one of them or someone else taking little photos of them, just really proud of what he'd done. And he's the first to say there's a hell of a lot more to do. It was just the first game, but I just thought that was really lovely just to see him soaking up the occasion. This huge stadium, with no disrespect to Wolves, who are, got a lot of history themselves. But in recent years, obviously, they were a promoted team. Obviously, got them to those 2 7th places, but they were still a promoted team. So for him, it is a huge step up to Tottenham and that stadium and the training ground and the quality of the players like the Sons of this world that he's working with, and Hugo Lloris, World Cup winners and stuff. And I just felt it was just a lovely moment of him just feeling a little bit of pride in what he'd done and enjoying it with his family as well. And I love that. And he got a lot of love from the fans. He had this moment before the match when he came out for his pre-match interview with Sky, and it was lovely. The fans were shouting his name. He got this big round of applause, and you could see he kind of generally was like, kind of took a moment. He was like I think he probably expected, and you can understand why, that the fans were going to very much be like, win us over. We didn't want you. Now you've got to show us why you deserve it. And boy, did he, which is really cool. But I must say, the fans in the stadium were already there and waiting for him. They didn't have that attitude. And I thought it was lovely. And at the end of the game, you've seen him celebrate the goal. It was like this real kind of fist-pumping moment. And at the end of the game, after applauding all the stands, he went down the tunnel and he was just like high-fiving all the fans at the sides and above him that he could reach. And it was lovely. And, and I've said this phrase before and I'll say it again, and I hope it comes to pass, that sometimes the person you didn't expect or maybe even want ends up being the perfect person. And I really hope that's the case with Nuno Espirito Santo, because he does. He seems a good guy. And I'm really fascinated to see what his Tottenham Hotspur is going to evolve into, because if he can do that in his first match against the champions, they were slightly weakened. Obviously not at their top fitness levels yet, some of their players, but that'll be the same for Spurs as well. But I thought he smashed it in his first game. And there's a lot more tough games to come, of course there is. But no, I was so impressed. I really was. And I felt that the fans were proud again. There was a real connection. I think, there could have been a really toxic atmosphere at the game. And I thought that was a really weird. Daniel Levy's chairman's message went out early in the day, which normally I kind of look at them and think, okay, fair play. And you can see that they're messages that have very much been crafted to explain what's gone on in the football side of things and why this and why that and what's to come and all of this. And I just felt it was a really, I don't know if you saw it, but if you haven't, have a little look at it. It's like, it was almost like a corporate email sent out. It was a very weird one. It was all talking about environmental stuff that the club have done, which is good, but it kind of felt a little bit like, okay. It was talking about NFL coming back, concerts coming back, the Beavertown Corner Pin Brewery being done. And it almost felt like a company putting out this statement of, here are the areas of the business that we have achieved and succeeded in this year. Thank you for your support. And it was a bit like, if I was the chairman, this is only me and I'm not the chairman of Tottenham Hotspur, but if I was going into a game where there might have been little worries in the back of Daniel Levy's mind about chants against him, like there were after the Aston Villa game towards the end of last season, or protests even or something, I just felt you needed to have a little bit more of a kind of a connecting chairman's message, something with a bit of passion, something that said, look, we're going to go places. We're going to get this club back on an even keel again. We're going to improve. And, we've made 3 transfers so far and just watch us. There's more to come. And it really very, very little even talk of the football side of things. And, I think right at the end it was like, and welcome to Fabio and Nuno and good luck to the team or something like that. It was like this add-on at the end. And it's like, when everyone or a lot of fans are saying that Levy and the powers that be are only in it for the money and the business side, to release an opening day message that was all about the business side. And don't get me wrong, the environmental stuff is great. Talked about the community and the years since the riots and what the club have done for the community. And that is great. But having that as the entire thrust of your message, along with all the, all the events that are to come back to the stadium in a business sense. And it was, I just don't know, it just felt like a misstep. I wasn't a big fan of that. I don't know where the advice came and who that was written or drafted by or how much. I don't know. I don't know how it all works. But, I just felt someone along the line just had to say, they just had to make weird noises, essentially. Harry Kane. We have to talk about Harry Kane as well because, as you may be very well aware now, there was the chant very loudly as the fans grew more and more confident about the performance and the result of "Are you watching Harry Kane?" It was very loud actually. It was pretty much almost all Spurs fans. I wouldn't say everyone because I've had some Spurs fans saying I wasn't chanting that, but I would say it was the bulk. I'd hope that he would have taken it if he'd heard it. I'm sure he has since. That I'd say the majority of people were singing it in a way of not in a nasty way, but saying, Look what could happen. This guy clearly knows what he's doing, Espirito Santo. Come and be a part of this. Don't go off. from his side, you can totally understand he might be thinking, or his people might be thinking, yeah, but it's one game. And let's be honest, City still got to give a much better chance of winning the trophies and all this sort of stuff. I get that. But I'd like to think that was what the chant was meant on the whole. I'm sure some people were very angry and they were saying it in that respect. It's still unclear whether Harry Kane was there on the day. He was training at Hotspur Way in the morning, which is, Espirito Santo explained he wasn't going to be in the squad because he was working on his fitness. Everyone that I spoke to do with Spurs said that they didn't see him on the day. There's some suggestions he may have been in a box, which would be an explanation of why they didn't see him. So we haven't really found out whether he was actually there or not on the day. Even Espirito Santo said, I don't know what his plans are for the afternoon after the training in the morning. And I've seen some people saying, I kind of understand it, that it's a little bit strange that nothing went out on social media from him after the game. Look, we're not naive. We know that footballers on the whole, a hell of a lot of them in the Premier League, don't do their own social media stuff. They have a team or a person that does them. But whoever does it, whether it is Harry Kane or whether it is people that work for him, it's just normally when he doesn't play, he will put a post up that says, congratulations, boys, what a win, blah, blah, blah. And yes, I know it's awkwardly against the team that he clearly would like to play for. But I just thought that was a little bit odd. And I mean, yes, he might have been worried about the comments and the what would come back underneath the post. But I think the good would outweigh the bad with a post like that. I was a little bit surprised that it never came. It kind of feeds into the narrative of he just doesn't want to be there, which I don't think is entirely the case. All the suggestions seem to be that this week he will be, he's fully back with the squad and he's in the squad for the Europa Conference League game, the glamour tie. I don't think it's not like he's a player going on strike or anything like that. I think it's just been a bit of a mess. It's all been a bit awkward and it's all not being dealt with in the best way. And I just think the biggest thing, there's a part of me that feels sad for Harry Kane in that, other than the fact that it's sad to see people kind of running him down now when he's one of the best players to have ever played for Tottenham. He is. There's no getting away from it. He's the second highest goal scorer in the club's history. He's a phenomenal player. He is, with Lewandowski, the best number 9 in the world, the two of them. So I don't really like whatever people make of him wanting to leave the club. And I can understand that that's not what you ever want to hear, and you can be disappointed with what's happened in the last few weeks or so, and the fact that he was clearly never really going to be available for this match. But yeah, I'm not a massive fan of kind of all of that aspect of it, and just kind of running him down. Because I think I think he's just such a class player and he's given so much to Tottenham over the years. But what I would say, the little thing I do kind of feel sad is I almost feel he's been sold this idea that Man City absolutely desperately want him and he will be a Man City player and he will score the incredible amount of goals we know he will score there and he will win everything. And I don't know whether he's been sold the truth. I just see how Man City are operating with regard to this and all the talk that comes out of the club and the people that write on the club and all that. And it's these figures that are coming out and you just think, are you really that serious about trying to sign him? Do you really want him that much? And that's the bit that I feel sad because any manager in the world should want to sign Harry Kane almost whatever it takes. He's that good. And I just feel City have never given that kind of message. It's never been that way. Pep's come out publicly, not probably the best way of doing it, but he said, if Spurs were to negotiate, we'd be interested. And it's a bit like, if you were really interested, you'd have slapped in a huge bid at the start of the summer. You wouldn't be messing around with 2 weeks to go to the transfer window. Yeah, it's a very strange one. It's a very strange one. And like I've said before, there are little inklings from within his camp that he wouldn't be entirely against signing a new contract. How true that is, or whether that's just a kind of a case of covering themselves if the move doesn't happen, which, let's be honest, we're now at the stage where I almost can't see how a move can happen, because to replace a player of his stature in this amount of time, you're not talking about one striker. You're talking about the best playmaker in the Premier League last season and the best goal scorer. It's 2 to 3 players. And I think we're at that stage now where it's almost too difficult to do that. And then next summer, his chance could be gone, which could be why we're getting what we're getting this summer. But it's such a shame. It really is. I mean, as we're on it, let's talk about transfers. Let's get into all of that. 2 weeks to the deadline. Paratici was at the game again. It was quite funny, actually, because of COVID guidelines and regulations. Anyone that is in and around the dressing room, I think it's called the red zone. I think that's where it's called at football grounds in the Premier League. If you're in that, you then have to sit within that group, essentially, because then you can't go away and mix with other people and come back to the red zone, if you see what I mean. So we've got this funny thing at the moment of the managing director of football, Fabio Paratici, and the technical performance director, Steve Hitchens, sitting in the dugout in the row behind Nuno Espirito Santo and the coaches, and they are vocal. You can see them shouting at the every decision, standing up and giving pep some when he was complaining as well. And at the final whistle, Paratici did that biggest thumping kind of fist pump thing, and Hitchin turned around and was like, whoa! It was like proper kind of, it was real fan stuff. It was like, it was pretty good, actually. It was like lovely to see the passion, and clearly I think there's just a delight for the whole regime, this new regime at Tottenham, and the first match beating the champions. It must be such a release. It's quite funny. Dig out the videos on Twitter. They're very funny. But Paratici on his phone, again, before the match, as he always is. Not during, but before he certainly was. And now's essentially Paratici time. We used to have Frankie Fridays back in the day with Frank Arneson, didn't we? And now it's very much Paratici time. And the good thing, I would say, you've heard me speak about this spiderweb of transfers that Paratici does, where he negotiates with up to 10 players for every position, which is absolute carnage and a nightmare for us as reporters and fans to kind of pick the bones out of and who actually is the eventual target. But what it does do, the plus side, is that now when you get to this kind of crunch time with the 2 weeks left, when decisions are made, okay, we are going for that person, or money comes in from an outgoing transfer, the deals are at such a stage you can just say, right, okay, that just needs that finishing touch, that just needs that extra million that they're asking for, and we go for that. The player's already sorted, the player wants to come, terms agreed, whatever, bang. And it'll be really interesting to see now kind of which of those ones that we know that they've been negotiating for then come to be. Because, I understand that they want another centre-back. They certainly did want another right-back. Whether Tanganga's performance makes them think twice about that, and I think it might. They want another attacking midfielder and they want a striker. The attacking midfielder may be dependent on people going. Like I say, I think they've got a nice kind of balance of wingers right now, whether they just need that, a Lo Celso and Ndombele, maybe someone that just plays a little bit further than them. They're both players that can play a bit deeper, maybe another number 10 type, maybe more of an Eriksen type kind of thing, We'll see, but I'm really intrigued to see kind of, of course they'll have to replace anyone unexpected that leaves, they'll have to replace them in that position as well. But yeah, no, I'm intrigued to see kind of now which ones go over the line, because you look at someone like Takahiro Tomiyasu, who I say that, do they think twice about a right back because of Tanganga? But then you look at someone like Tomiyasu, and actually he can cover that right back and centre back, a bit like Tanganga. So does he then, for what will probably only be around £20 million, something like that, maybe it's slightly more with add-ons and all that sort of stuff, but does he become a player who is young, learning, and actually you can develop in either role you want to? There's Nikola Milenkovic, who, I've been saying for, almost a year that Spurs have been looking at him. Maybe not as long as a year, but they certainly have been looking at him for a long time. And he's on his last year of his contract. I think he's only something like £17 million, maybe less. And he's got a little bit of leadership they're looking for as well. He's been given the armbands a few times from Fiorentina. We know they're talking to Fiorentina a lot at the moment because they've also been talking about Dusan Vlahovic. They really like Vlahovic. Paratici really likes him. The problem right now is Atletico Madrid. They also really like him. And then it comes a case of, trying to convince the player, I suppose, where he's going to get the most game time. With Spurs, you'd have to change the system. I was told that if Spurs sign another striker, which is the aim, it would be one to play with Harry Kane, and then Espirito Santo would go more to the two up front that he played at Porto, obviously with less success, because obviously the players weren't the players he'd have available at Tottenham, with no disrespect to Porto, because they are obviously a very successful club. But yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what happens there. Obviously, Lautaro Martinez was one that I'm not going to go into all of that again with Inter Milan, but essentially, in short, Spurs thought they were kind of coming towards an agreement in principle for him. Then Lukaku, Chelsea came in and blew them out of the water essentially with a huge, almost £100 million bid for Lukaku. And then obviously Inter look at that and say, we can't lose both, and we're getting way more for Lukaku. We're selling Hakimi as well, went to PSG. Do we also need to sell our other star striker? I wouldn't say that door's entirely closed, because who knows, the actually real depth and detail of how financially stuffed Inter are, and whether they just decide in the final weeks that we're just going to have to let him go, and then you bring in some cheaper striker alternatives. But Spurs currently, the feeling is that Vlahovic is a bit more likely than a Martinez, but then you've also got the added threat of Atletico Madrid. And like I say, with the way Paratici works, there will be other strikers that we won't even be aware of that you can suddenly turn to quite quickly, if that's the case. I mean, look at others. You look at Damsgaard, spoke about that attacking midfielder. He's one that I've said earlier in the window they could come back for at the end of the window. Noni Madueke used to be at Spurs, young player, 19-year-old who's doing very well at PSV. He's a player that Spurs could have a look at again. I don't know whether it'd be quite difficult to get him away. I think PSV are quite intent on trying to keep him in this window. He is only young. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to see kind of who comes in these 2 weeks and which of those they pull the trigger on, which other ones will come into the frame. Because obviously Romero was a terrific signing. He looks to be a fantastic prospect. Got to watch him in the final of the Olympics, and he was probably one of the best players of the match. And Galini, is hopefully the successor for Lloris when Lloris decides, or the club decides, that Lloris's time is done. It's quite interesting to see what's happening with Lloris. I think, there's been a lot of talking about players and how they're reacting to their futures and stuff like that. Have a look at Hugo Lloris. Hugo Lloris, as it stands, has not been offered a new contract by Tottenham. I know there was talk of looking to do it, but from what he seems to be saying, it doesn't look like it's forthcoming at the moment. He's got 12 months left. He's just been absolutely, utterly like Lloris always is. Absolutely stoic, doing what he's got to do, being a leader, and has been, and I'm not saying anyone else, I'm not talking about any other players, I'm not genuinely not saying that, I'm just purely saying about Lloris. He just gets on with it. He came back from the Euros and he cracked on. There was no worry, there was no, public, I'm really upset I haven't been given another contract, anything like this. He's just cracked on, and again was a kind of a very solid presence at the back on Sunday, and it'd be interesting to see kind of what happens with him this season. And he had a very good season, I felt, last year, very consistent, one of the few kind of consistent players at Tottenham. And if he has a big season, I'd be interested to see what happens with the future, because he is a player who, he wants to go to France eventually, back to France. There's been talk of maybe an MLS move, but, he loves the club. He does. So, yeah, sorry. Bit of a tangent there. But, yeah, let's see who comes in. I've still got to get players out the door. Serge Aurier, obviously, hasn't been included in the Europa League squad, and he wants out. Spurs want him out, so I'd be stunned if that doesn't happen. Moussa Sissoko, I think Spurs would like him to go, and I don't think there's been the interest that they maybe hoped for him, but we have to keep an eye on that situation as well. Tanguy Ndombele. I got told today, was it today or yesterday on Twitter by someone, I got told by one person that I'm always too nice to Tanguy and I give him excuses when he doesn't deserve it. And I got told literally probably about 5 minutes later by someone that you're a Tanguy hater. And it's a bit like, whoa. If anyone knows me, I maybe do edge slightly towards the former. I love Tanguy Ndombele, the way he plays. A bit like my Lamela passion. was that I love watching players who take risks, who do wonderful things with the football, and I'd say Ndombele is even more so that than Lamela. He's so naturally gifted. He could be one of the best players in the world, but ultimately Tongi Ndombele has to want that to happen, and he has to listen to what he's being told to do to make that happen. And you know, you can't get to this stage where you've had Mourinho, Mason, and now Espirito Santo of all kind of sometimes more than hinted that he's just not giving them what they want. It was earlier days with Poch before Poch went. But, and this was also something we heard from previous coaches. Is it Bruno Genesis? I can't remember his name, the Lyon coach. And other youth coaches have all said the same thing. There's this kind of feeling with him that he just goes through these cycles of really knuckling down, working really hard, playing consistently well, then perhaps, I don't know, maybe believing his own hype, and then it starts to unravel a bit, and then they start the process again. And I just hope for him, because, he's just become a dad. It's been quite a summer for him, first-time father. But just to hear a new manager saying already, he's not in the right moment to play competitive football, and he's been left out of the Europa Conference League squad for these 2 playoff matches. Whether he goes, certainly Spurs at the start of the summer had no intention of letting him go. And I still would be surprised if anyone would offer the kind of money that would tempt them. He's a club record signing. It was upwards of £60 million. I'd be surprised at that. And I still do think there's this belief that if someone can just shake him, give him a bit of a wake-up call, he could be one of the best. He's that good. He's an incredible player. And he's still so young. Was he 23, 24 maybe now? I think he might be 24. He's got everything about his game, and he even showed under Mourinho, despite having clear differences with Mourinho, he got himself into the fittest possible state he could be in. He had a real consistent run through the bulk of the season, playing very well. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, the Dele Alli role that I've been praising Dele Alli for, I actually think fits on Ndombele like a glove, because it's slightly, if he were to tweak it slightly, so rather than a midfield 3 across, it was a 2 with 1 in front. On Ndombele, without that little bit of defensive pressure, because Skipp and Højbjerg are taking that on, it could be sensational. He would have to work hard, because every player in a Nuno Espirito Santo team, like a Mourinho team, like even more so a Pochettino team, has to work hard. I just hope they sort it out, because I'm so disappointed. This smiling face that you've had because of Sunday's result will not be there if Tongi Ndombele goes. I know he gets a lot of jibes from the fans. They take the mickey out a lot of things that, let's be honest, aren't true. Some people saying he's fat and all that. He's not. He's absolutely not. There's a photo of him at the media stuff the other day where he did the new kits. When you see him on the Sky and they're doing all the turn to camera stuff for your lineup shots. He's actually pretty trim. Far from it. But he clearly just maybe doesn't knuckling down. He's just not doing something that Espirito Santo wants. Otherwise, he'd be in the squad. And it's so disappointing. Let's see who goes out. Alfie Whiteman's headed out. He's gone to Degerfors, I think it's pronounced maybe, in Sweden, which some people might be like, huh? But actually, if you're a goalkeeper at that level, whatever your first loan move, as long as you're going to play, it's a good one. Brandon Austin went to, was it Viborg in Denmark, I remember, is his first one. Then went to Orlando City in MLS. Whatever game time you get is fantastic for you. And this is his turn now. He gets to go off and do that. Brandon Austin's come back in. He'll be the 3rd keeper by the looks of it, behind Galini and Lloris. England under-21 international. I don't know whether they'll bring in another experienced goalkeeper. I'd be surprised. You'd think Austin now will get the shot, will get the chance. But yeah, it's going to be a busy few weeks. It really is. And obviously we've got this week the Europa Conference League game. No Ndombele or Aurier. Like I said, Kane is in the squad. You've got Pat Scotsey, Jack Clark, Cameron Carter-Vickers are all in there as well. And it's Pacos de Ferreira, Portuguese side. The stadium only holds 9,000 people, which is going to take me a little bit back to my kind of League 2 non-league routes, which will be interesting. I'm hopefully going along. I'm doing a test not long after I record this video, which will pretty much define whether I get to go. Not a written test or anything, an actual, one of these PCR tests. And if that's all good, then I shall head over to Portugal, which will be the first time I've been out of the country in a long, long time. And then we've got Wolves on Sunday. So it's just non-stop now. Now we're into this really busy 2 weeks where there's transfer stuff and matches galore all happening within a few days of each other. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. I might look a little bit more knackered if I don't already when I do the next one of these. But no, apologies for the length between this video and the last one. But obviously, I want to have a little bit of time off. And it was very nice. And thank you to everyone that wished me a happy birthday. I had my birthday last week, which was lovely as well. But yeah. Back to the grindstone, back to Tottenham Hotspur, and it's been very enjoyable so far. And I hope it continues on Thursday night. I should, all going well with my test, be able to watch open training, and I might even actually be at an in-the-face press conference if they let me in the room. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to shout through at the open door, no, can I ask a question? Otherwise, I'm going to have to do it over Zoom, sitting in a room next to him, which will be weird, but there you go. It's the way things are now. And yeah, so I'm going to head off now. Keep an eye on transfer stuff. Like I say, I think we'll see some more new names come out of the woodwork as well in the days ahead. There will be more players that Paratici will have his eye on. Many from Serie A, I'm sure. But yeah, let's see what happens now with Nuno. I think he's had a really solid foundation he's built. Going back to Molineux will be a kind of an emotional thing for him. And the game's just come thick and fast. But I shall be taking you through it all. Don't worry. I'll be here with you, holding your hand across the medium of YouTube. So yeah, as always, look after yourselves, stay healthy, stay safe, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.